الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا شهيد يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We spoke last night about the Arabian culture during the Jahiliya period. And we said that the Arabs during the Jahiliya had both good and bad customs, practices, and values. We spoke about the good practices of the Arabian culture. For example, we spoke about generosity. Most people were generous. We spoke about the bravery and courage, the high sense of dignity, izzah, and self-respect that they had. And we also addressed the bad, the immoral habits and customs that they had. We said that they used to bury their daughters while they were alive because it was a disgrace to keep a girl. Many of them, they would kill their children because of poverty. You find the arrogance that was embedded in the society. They used to give their children repulsive names, and so on and so forth. We spoke about that. And now that we understand the Jahiliyan culture and society, I want to bring you to this modern day now, today. And I want you to draw parallels between that society and our society today, so we can understand that history is repeating itself, that the same things that happen in Jahiliyyah, they're happening today. So let us look and analyze the Western culture and society today and see how it compares to the Jahiliyan culture. If we look at the Western society and culture, for example, here in Canada, or in the US, in Australia, or in Europe, we find many common denominators. In the same way that we said in the Jahiliyyah, there were good and bad things, likewise in the Western society, you will find good things, and you will find evil practices, immoral practices, bad aspects of the Western society. Let's list some of them. Some of the good things that you find in the Western society is, and you might not necessarily find it in the Middle East, in our societies, is that most people here, they will have good akhlaq. Most people are well-mannered. They're always smiling. They're honest. You find this prevalent in the Western society, but not too much in the Muslim countries. You find most people are punctual. When they give you a time, they come on time. And this likewise is not too widespread in our countries. And I'll speak more about the akhlaq in one of my lectures in the following nights, inshaAllah. You find here in the West, they care for nature. You find that everything they build and they make, they want to make sure it's environment friendly. In the Middle East, nobody cares about the environment. Very little people. Here they care for nature, they care for animals in a way that Muslims don't care. So these are all good things that you find in the West. You find here, most people, they exercise. Go in the morning to a park, you'll see tens, maybe sometimes in certain parks in America or here, you'll find hundreds of people all running and jogging. In Iraq, you won't see anyone jogging. If someone is running in Iraq, he's running away from an explosion, a suicide bomber. No one exercises there. Here, they try to eat healthy food. They have this awareness that let's eat healthy food. Don't just eat these rice and meat and all of that. Let's try to eat organic food. Nobody even knows what organic means in the Middle East. So here they have many good things that we learn from. But at the same time, there are certain negative aspects of the Western society. Amongst those negative things and bad habits that they have here is dating. Dating is ingrained in the society of the West. They grow up with the idea that you have to find a date. If you're a boy, find a girl. If you're a girl, find a boy, even though now a boy finding a boy is also okay. So ever since they're children, they teach them about dating. SubhanAllah, sometimes you turn on the TV and you watch the children's shows like Nickelodeon and Disney, and you see they have shows for small children, and it teaches them about what? About dating and liking the opposite gender. Sometimes you see small kids, they kiss and they tell each other we like each other. And this is perfectly normal in the West. If you're in school, in fact, you're taught at a small age that when it's Valentine, find a date, take them a present. When it's prom time, you need a date and you take them to the prom. And you'll find when they grow up, they will live a couple for years together and they're not married. And this is fine. This is all part of the Western society. In our society in the Middle East, this is what? This is unacceptable. But here it is fine and it's a part of their life. And in fact, if you find someone in the West that does not date, for whatever reason, people will begin to think he has a problem, a mental problem. Or maybe he doesn't like the opposite gender. Maybe he's a homosexual. So that's why in school, if there is a child that does not want to date, they will begin to see him as a weirdo, as an outcast. This is a negative aspect of the Western society. Another negative aspect, another negative habit is you find that here in the West, family is not too important like we have it in the Muslim countries. Friends usually are more important to one's life than his family members. He spends most of his time with his friends, not family members. As soon as he's 18 or she's 18, they want to leave the house and they want to go and live with their friends because they don't want to spend their time with their family members in most cases. You find when they grow older, their parents don't live with them. Their parents live in the senior citizen houses, the nursery homes. This is something unacceptable in our culture, but here it's perfectly fine. And even if you find, even if they maintain family ties, it will only be with the immediate family. Father, mother, maybe brothers and sisters. What about your uncle, your great uncle? Maybe he does not even know who his great uncles. His cousins, second cousins. Most of the times they never speak to them. They don't know anything about them. But go to the Muslim countries, no, it's all about family. Another negative aspect that you find in the West is their obsession with drinking. Every time they want to have fun, they want to enjoy themselves, they have to drink alcohol. You sit in the plane, they drink alcohol. You go to a game, they drink alcohol. They go to the restaurant, they drink alcohol. They want to sit and relax, they drink alcohol. They go to the beach, alcohol, it's all about alcohol. They're obsessed with drinking. This is something negative in the Western society. Another negative habit in the Western society is their carelessness and negligence of najasa and tahara. Correct? And many Muslims, they suffer from this. The way in which they take care of their personal hygiene. You go to their restrooms, there's no water. There is no hose. And many Muslims, when they come, this is a big deal for them. How do I take care of my personal hygiene when you don't care about najasa and tahara? So you find all of these negative aspects. So there's good and there's the bad. And like I mentioned yesterday about the Jahiliya, I said that most cases when the human being commits something immoral, something wrong, usually he knows it, he acknowledges it. Why? We said because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has programmed us to understand good and bad. He says in the Holy Quran, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah taught us good and bad. So we know what's moral and what's immoral. We feel it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it. He built this inside us. But then we said that this is the natural disposition of the human being if he's untouched. But many times there will be external factors that will play with the brain of the human being. And they will manipulate it. They will alter it. And ultimately will pervert his understanding of right and wrong. If the human being is left untouched, we said, yes, he understands what's right and what's wrong. But when the society sometimes plays with his mind and the upbringing of his parents, as we spoke about it, sometimes he will lose his moral compass. And he will no longer tell the difference between right and wrong. And in some severe cases, it will be the opposite. Good will be bad in his eyes and bad will be good. And we gave examples of the Jahiliya culture. We said this is what happened in the Jahiliya. Good things had turned into bad. Like what? Like showing mercy to your child. Kissing your child was a taboo. It was looked down upon. It was something unacceptable in that society. Yes? And bad things, they were looked as good. Bad things like what? Like burying your child. This was looked as very good. Yes? If you have a daughter, go and kill her and bury her. This crime, this sin was looked as a good thing. The society expected the father to bury their girls alive, and he would be doing the moral, virtuous, noble act by killing his own child. So their moral compass was completely malfunctioning. You find that they did not understand what morality is. They had developed a new understanding, a new distorted, perverted understanding of morality. We spoke about that. Come to the West, my friends, today, and you can draw many parallels between Jahiliyyah and today. In the same way that in the Jahiliyyah, their morality had become perverted and it had become the opposite, this is exactly what is happening now in the Western society. And as I said, history what? Repeats itself. And that's why we have to be careful not to fall in the same trap that the people of Al-Jahiliyyah. I gave an entire lecture about Jahiliyyah. It wasn't a history class. I gave that lecture so that we can draw parallels to today's world. Us living in the Western society, I said there's good things in the West. We learn, we follow in their footsteps. But we have to be careful of the immorality that exists in the Western society. So you find in the West, the same thing is happening. Many things that used to be considered as immoral here in the West are now becoming acceptable, becoming normal, becoming moral. Just go back 50 years ago, here in Canada, in America, in Europe, and you will find that many actions were considered immoral. But now, 2017, they're considered moral. They're considered okay. Society, the public accepts it. It's normal. They tolerate it and there's nothing wrong with it. To an extent that if someone from 50 years ago here in Canada, if someone living 50 years ago, if you take him and bring him to the future, he would be shocked. He would be so disturbed at the immorality. What's going on with my society? Not just at the spread of morality. That's on one hand. But what's worse is the acceptance of this immorality. You can have immorality, but the public doesn't want it, doesn't like it, doesn't accept it. What's happened now is that even the public, they accept it. They see it as perfectly fine. He would be so disturbed. Why has my community accepted this immorality? Why are they okay with it? Why are they indifferent about it? There was a study recently that Gallup did in the US. It was about morality. In this study, it's a very beautiful study. Listen carefully, brothers and sisters. In this study, they found that Americans have developed an increasingly liberal outlook towards morality and moral acceptance. Every year, they are becoming more and more liberal with their view of morality. Morality is changing every single year. Their definition of morality, their perspective and view of morality is becoming more and more liberal every year. Meaning what? Meaning every year, year after year, more and more moral issues that used to be considered immoral are now being considered moral. 50 years ago, it was bad, it was taboo, it was aib, it was shameful. Now, it's what? It's being acceptable. The study found that year after year, it's getting worse. More and more immoral things, people are considering them as okay. So you see the public attitude towards many social and moral issues is changing. There's a shift. People's understanding of what's right and wrong, what's moral and immoral, is drastically changing in the West, and especially in the US, and Canada is very close to the US. It's the same type of society. Whatever happens there, it happens here too. And what you find is that 50 years ago in Canada and America, people had shame, they had haya. And their haya prevented them from committing many immoral acts. They would be afraid from breaking the moral code. Do you know why? Because as soon as someone in the society would commit an immoral act, the entire public would shame them, would denounce them, would condemn them, would stigmatize them, and look down at them as deplorable human beings. They would look at their act as being a despicable act. And that's why if someone wanted to commit something immoral, he would never dare do it in the public, because everyone will look down upon him. They would express their dissatisfaction. What are you doing? You have no shame? So if they wanted to do something immoral, they would do it in private, secretly, because they had some haya. It's aib. I'm not going to do this in the public, because the public rejected immorality 50 years ago. And this is the philosophy of al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. When we say that one of the obligations of a Muslim is to always what? For enjoin the good and forbid the evil. Why? Why is it my responsibility that when I see evil, I stand up against it and try to prevent it? Why? Why can't I just live and think about myself? I live as a good person, I don't do evil, and I don't care about other people. It's not my business. Why can't I be indifferent about other people's actions? Do you know why? Because the philosophy behind that is, if someone wants to commit a sin, even if he does not fear Allah, he should fear the people. If the people would stigmatize him, denounce him, look down upon him, that will be a deterrent. He won't commit that sin. Because he's not afraid of Allah, he's afraid of the people, correct? I don't want the people to speak negatively of me. So when I speak against someone that does haram, and you speak against him, and you speak, and everyone speaks against him, he's gonna feel discouraged from doing it. He's like, I'm not gonna do that sin, because everybody will speak against me. At the same time, if we become indifferent, if I say I don't care, and you say I don't care, and he says and she says, that person that wants to commit the sin is gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna commit that sin because people aren't gonna shame me. People are not going to speak against me, so he will be encouraged to do it. This is the entire philosophy of al-nahi anil munkar. It's a deterrent. It will discourage people from doing haram. And the society will be evil free. No one will do evil because they will be afraid of each other. You find in the West, this philosophy existed 50 years ago. People would prevent morality by what? By speaking against it, by seeing it as something shameful, by shaming the one that does something immoral. That's why you find, as I said, people, if someone wanted to do something immoral, they would do it secretly, privately, because they did not have the guts to declare it in the public. The public would denounce that person. They would shame him. But look at what's happened now. Now, when everybody says, I don't care, let that person do whatever he wants, the obvious result is the spread of immorality. When that person that wants to commit the immoral act sees the society doesn't care, they're indifferent, he's going to say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I'm not just going to do it, I will publicly do it. I will do it in front of the people because the people don't care. They have no haya. And thus he will have no haya. And this is exactly what's happened. By staying quiet and indifferent, we are granting that person that wants to commit the immoral act impunity. And when we grant them impunity, they will be encouraged to do it more and more. And all of this, my friends, highlights one important point. That the West is advancing in so many ways. In technology, it's advancing. In science and advancing, but when it comes to morality, it's not advancing, it's going backwards. It's regressing. 50 years ago, morality was much better here in Canada than now. Yes, maybe technology, maybe science, maybe the universities, the hospitals, now they're more advanced than they ever were. But with morality, it's a downward spiral. We're just going down and down and down. So the West, my friends, is in a moral decline. And every year it is getting worse and worse. And let me give you a few examples to highlight this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll give you 3 examples to show you how our understanding in the West of immorality has become so perverted. The first example is the dress code of women in the West. If you go back to the late 60s and the 70s, in America, in the United States, and here in Canada and all of the West, the dress code of women was much more modest. It was much more reserved, much more protective, much more strict. You find that in the US, up until the early 70s, a respectful woman would not wear pants in the public. Do you know that? Read this in the history books. Up until the early 70s, a respectful woman would not wear pants in the public. Do you know why? Because she would be shamed. They would say, look at this lady, she has no shame. She's wearing pants in the public and she's a lady. So a respectful woman would not do that. What did they have to wear? Long dresses and what? Long dresses or they would wear long skirts. This was in the US. And this feeling, I tell you, was so prevalent and it was so, widespread that people saw a woman wearing pants as aib, as shameful, as despicable. It was so prevalent that many public schools in the US, they banned girls from wearing pants because it's aib. How dare you come to public school, do such an immoral act? Wear pants? You're a girl. Either wear skirts or wear a dress. So the government in the US, what they had to do, they had to pass a law. And now you could read about it. It's called Title IX. They had to pass the law called Title IX. Why? They had to tell the public schools, don't tell the girls what they wear and don't wear. It's up to them. Because the shaming was so widespread that girls wanted to wear pants to school, but the school told them no. So the government had to come and tell the public schools, you're not allowed to tell the girls you have to wear a dress. You have to wear a skirt. They could wear pants if they want. So you see the public, most people in the public, they had that level of haya and shame that this is immoral, this is immoral. This is unacceptable for a girl to wear pants. This is in America. I'm not talking about Bangladesh or Afghanistan or Iraq. The United States of America, up until the early 70s. And it was not until the early 70s that they passed this bill. Schools cannot tell the girls that they can't wear pants. This is how many years ago? 40 years ago. What's happened today, my friends? Why did everything change so much? Go to the public schools and see what they're wearing, the girls. If they're even wearing anything. Look at the clothes, keep on getting tighter and tighter, and they keep on exposing more of their body. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's fine, it's acceptable. They're not bad girls. They're not seen as immoral girls. They're the best girls. Their parents love them, they're happy with them. No one tells them that, look, be modest, cover up your body. This is immoral, leave religion out. Who cares about religion? Morality has nothing to do with religion as they claim, correct? We have to be moral human beings no matter what our religion is. Even an atheist claims that I'm a moral human being. Where did your morality go? 40 years ago, this was seen as bad. Why is it so acceptable now? Where did the haya go? You see gradually what's happening? And it's getting worse every single year. And subhanallah, not only is it now seen acceptable for a girl to go out naked in public, and it's perfectly fine, I don't care, it's her decision. Not only are they okay with that, but if they see a girl, a woman that wants to cover up and wear hijab, she's the bad one now. Why are you wearing hijab? This is oppression to women. This is backwards. How many times do you hear that? The hijab, a woman which symbolizes modesty, is now looked at something bad. It's something backwards. But a girl that exposes her body, now she's the good one. What's happened to our moral system? Good has turned into bad, and bad has turned into good. This is exactly what happened to the Jahiliya. Do you think our akhlaq, our morality now in the West is better than the Jahiliya? And it's getting worse, my friends. It's getting worse. Just read every year the statistics. It's getting worse and worse and worse. People are becoming more tolerant, more acceptable towards immorality year after year. I read a few years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, in France. There's a girl. She goes to school, a Muslim girl. And she gets kicked out of the class. Do you know why? Because she's not wearing hijab? No, she was not wearing hijab. SubhanAllah, you'd be shocked. Look at the immorality that exists now in the Western world. She was kicked out of her class not because she's wearing hijab, because her skirt is too long. Too short? This is 50 years ago. A girl had to wear skirts, the long type of skirts, the ones that were up to the feet, up to the ankles. Just Google it, you'll see so many websites, news telling you about it. A girl is kicked out of her class because her skirt is too long. They asked the teacher, why'd you kick her out? She can't wear skirts that long. This is religion. We don't want religion in France. They shame a girl for being modest in the same way that in the Jahiliya, they used to shame a father for keeping his girl. Are we better than Jahiliya now? And I'm telling you, it's getting worse. Wait 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Wallahi, you'll hear about crazy things that will happen in the West. You see the moral decline of the West? Hijab is bad. Covering your body is bad. I'll kick you out of class. But if you go out naked, this is fine. You're a good citizen. You're a good person. And just 50 years ago, the same society was completely different. Do you see the swift change in the understanding of what's right and wrong? And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he spoke about this, that a time will come. He said, كَيْفَ بِكُمْ إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْمُنْكَرَ مَعْرُوفًا وَالْمَعْرُوفَ مُنْكَرًا. He said a day will come in which people will see good as bad and bad as good. And this time has come and it's getting worse year after year. A hijab which is good, people will see it as bad. People don't like seeing in the West a girl wearing hijab. They will shame her. They don't want to get close to her. They see this as backwards, even though she wants to be modest. But the good girl is the one that exposes her body. She'll get kicked out of class, not for wearing hijab. They're not even allowed to go to school if they wear hijab in France, public school. But she will get kicked out of class if she's wearing long skirts. So this is the first example to the moral decline of the West. We have to be careful, my friends. And I'll speak about in a few nights of how we Muslims were also being affected by this immorality. When we come and we live in the West, especially our youth, they become affected by the same poisonous mentality. That they begin to accept all immorality. Yeah, let's have immorality. What's wrong with it? It's their decision. It's up to them. The girl doesn't want to cover up. I don't care. Let her show her body. The Westerners do it. So this is the first example. The second example of the moral decline of the Western society is with children being born out of wedlock. Let's go once again to the early 70s, subhanAllah. The early 70s, that golden age, which is now gone. If you go back to the early 70s, here in Canada, and in America, and in the UK, if a girl that was not married, she's single, if she would become pregnant, that would be the greatest disgrace for her parents. The worst, you know what the worst news for a father and mother here in Canada and America was? That their 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old girl who's not married is pregnant. My daughter is pregnant? How can I live with that shame? They considered that as a stigma that would stain their family's name forever. Nothing could remove. It was the worst nightmare for any parents that they would tell them, your girl is what? Your girl is, and she's not married, she's pregnant. It was so aib. The mother would say, oh my God, what will other people say about me now? What will my neighbors say? What will my friends say? And that's why, you know what the first thing they would do? When the girl tells her mother or father that I'm pregnant, the first thing they would tell her, shh, don't tell anyone. If anyone in the community knows, khalas, we won't be able to live. They'll kill us. Everyone will speak against us, will stigmatize us, look at us as such a bad family. What a bad family. Look at what type of girl they raised. This is how they looked at what? A child being born out of wedlock. A girl getting pregnant and she's not married. It was so aib. It was so shameful. They had that level of haya. So do you know what they would do? They used to have secret maternity houses. They used to take that girl, this is in Canada and America and the UK, and they would send that girl to those secret maternity houses. As soon as they know she's pregnant, khalas, she's sent there to live there. she would spend the remaining of her pregnancy in that secret maternity house. Why? So that the people in the city don't know that she's pregnant. Because it's the biggest scandal. Because it's the worst news that people know that my daughter, she did this act. So they used to get rid of her, send her to that secret maternity house, and she would stay there so nobody knows she's pregnant until she would deliver the baby. When people ask, where's your daughter? They would make up fake excuses. My daughter is sick. She went to spend the summer with her grandmother. Or she's visiting someone. Or she's studying abroad. She's overseas. They try to hide it because it's so aib. No one would want that their daughter is pregnant. So they try to hide it. And then once the boy or the child, the girl was born, they used to take it away from that mother. And they used to adopt it. Because no mother can live with the stigma of having an illegitimate child, ibn zina. No one would want that. They'd be shamed by the public. This is how many years ago? 40 to 50 years ago. What's happened now? Is it a stigma now to have a child, a illegitimate child? Now it's perfectly fine. There's absolutely no stigma attached to this behavior. It's normal, it's acceptable. Yes, every street in every city, every street will have a house of a girl that had an illegitimate child. That's perfectly fine. They don't feel ashamed about it. They accept it. Their acceptability is growing year after year. They'll declare it. They'll come and they'll say in front of everyone, yeah, my daughter had a child, so what? What's wrong with that? 50 years ago it was aib, but now it's perfectly acceptable. And you see, subhanAllah, that's why the rate of illegitimate children is increasing year after year. In some Western countries, the rate of illegitimate children is more than the rate of children being born from married parents. So if you go to a hospital in certain Western countries like France, if you go to a hospital, you go to the maternity section, the labor department, and you ask them how many kids were delivered this month. They'll tell you, for example, 500 kids this month. You ask them how many of them were ibn haram. They'll tell you 300 of the 500. And only 200 were awlad halal. Subhanallah. So the majority of kids are now born out of wedlock. This is like in France. In America, in the early 1970s, only 10% of children were awlad zina, haram. 90% ibn halal. Now how much? 40%. It's going up every year. Go back 10 years ago, it was 35%. 10 years more, 25%. What will happen in 10, 20, 40, 50 years? Maybe in 50 years in the West, 99% of kids will be illegitimate children. Because to them, it's no longer aib. So what? Ibn zina, ibn halal, so they're both the same. Because there's no more haya. There's no more haya. They accept it. And I read a statistic that said in America, 40% is the overall rate of illegitimate children, children being born out of wedlock. But with millennials, the youth, how much is it? 60%. So what does that tell you? That the new generation, they are more accepting of this habit. To them, it's even more okay. There's nothing bad, there's nothing immoral, nothing shameful about a girl that's not married and being pregnant and having a child. Nothing wrong with that. And it's getting worse and worse every single year, my friends. And that's why you find it's increasing. Because the community now finds it okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I remember once I was watching a show. There's one of those late night shows. A guy sits on a table and he brings a guest and he speaks with them. You've seen those late night shows. This man was supposedly a respectful man in the society. He's someone that maybe you could even consider him as a role model, but he's someone respectable. So one night I was watching it, he said, tonight I have good news. I want to make an announcement. What are you going to say? You know what he said? He said, yesterday I had a child from my girlfriend. And they all start clapping for him. They're all clapping at this man's immorality. Can you believe that? Basically, he's saying, I committed zina with a girl, and now she's pregnant, and she became pregnant, and she gave a child out of wedlock, ibn zina, and everyone claps for his ibn zina. This is in America. And tell the story to any average Westerner, yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? 50 years ago, no one would dare say that. This was so aib, so shameful, that someone who's not married has a child? And it's getting worse and worse every single year. The hadith of the Prophet, كَيْفَ بِكُمْ إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْمُنْكَرَ مَعْرُوفًا. Munkar, evil, becomes good. Immoral actions, they become moral. This is the second example. Shows you what? The moral decline of the West. The first we said with the what? The dress code. The second with children being born out of wedlock. And the third example, before I mention it, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. The third example, my friends, is same gender relations, or as they call it, homosexuality. And this third example is the greatest example of the moral decline of the Western society. How? Let's go to that golden age once again. We keep on mentioning the early 70s. I don't know what happened in the mid 70s where everything changed. All this immorality began spreading in the West. If you go back and read about the early 70s in America and Canada, how was a homosexual person seen? Do you know how they were seen? Number one, publicly, socially, they were looked as despicable, deplorable human beings. They would be stigmatized. People used to condemn them, see them as perverted human beings that commit immoral actions. The worst accusation you could accuse someone 40, 50 years ago was this person is homosexual. It's as if you, right now you accuse someone of being ISIS. How evil is that? How bad does that sound? 50 years ago, if someone is accused of being a homosexual, that's how bad it was. So publicly, they were shamed. Legally, they had absolutely no rights. Nowhere in the world they had rights where they could get married, same gender marriage. Religiously, 40 years ago, all religious denominations unanimously considered them as what? Sinners, haram. All religions. There was no religion, no sect, no even alim in any religion, no scholar of any faith that said this was okay. This is in the early 70s. Okay? And psychiatrists, they considered homosexuality as a mental disorder. Can you believe that? They considered this as a mental disorder. This person haram, he has a problem in his head. That's why he goes after the same gender. This was in the early 70s. Come to today, subhanallah, 40 years after. In 40 years, how much has the world changed in the West? Now, publicly, it is acceptable. It is fine. You can go walk by the beach and you'll see two men holding hands and walking. Perfectly fine. Will anyone even look? Will anyone shame them? No, because the public has learned to accept it. It's no longer immoral. It's no longer wrong. Even if I don't like it, I'll say I don't care. It's none of my business. 50 years ago, they would shame that person. That's why 50 years ago, no one would dare admit if he had those, feelings, no one would admit it. They would always keep it in secret, hide the fact that they had these feelings. So now, publicly, it is acceptable. Legally, alhamdulillah, they have their rights across the Western world, right? They can get married. And unfortunately, this country, Canada, was the third country in the world to accept, to give them their full rights of marriage. Even this was in 2005, 10 years before America. They always follow America, but I don't know why with the rights of the homosexuals. 10 years before America, they gave them the right to get married. And now there are 25 countries in the world that allow same-gender marriage. 25 countries, and it is growing. In 50 years, it'll be 100 countries. Just watch. And psychologically, we said psychiatrists, right? They used to consider this as a mental disorder. Now it's no longer a mental disorder. Now if you ask a psychiatrist, he will tell you there's two types of human beings. There's heterosexual and homosexual. SubhanAllah. In the early 70s, we didn't know that. There was just one type of human being who was healthy, who was sane, and he had feelings for the opposite gender. And anyone else was considered what? Was considered as sick, was considered as either a psycho, sick, or troubled mentally. But now, no, there's two types of human beings. There's hetero and homo. SubhanAllah, even the words The words, you can't even memorize them. Every year they bring up new words, technical terms, and all this nonsense. So psychiatrists now, they consider it normal. Religions. There are certain religious denominations now that no longer say it's a sin. Even within the Muslim world, you'll find there are certain, I get sometimes their videos. From Christians, many. From Jews, many. But even some Muslims so-called scholar, yeah, this is not a sin, this is okay. Subhanallah. In 40 years, how things have changed. It's a completely new society. They developed a completely new understanding of what's moral and immoral. I was reading in that same Gallup statistics that I spoke about the Americans' acceptance of morality and immorality. It said that in the late 80s, only 11% of Americans, they accepted same-gender relationships. So a 90%, they said this is immoral, this is wrong. We should not do that as human beings. This is one in the late 80s, so less than 30 years ago. And then in 2001, they did a study. How many people now accepted same-gender relationships? 45%. So from the late 80s to 2001, within this 10-15 year period, it went up from 11 to 45%. Tomorrow I'll speak about the reasons for this immorality. Why is it going up? And in 2017, the study mentioned that in America now, almost 65% of Americans, they see same-gender relationships as moral, acceptable. There's nothing wrong. From the late 80s till 2017, it's 30 years. It used to be 10%, now it's 65%. So 50% increase. 50% of the population shifted from seeing homosexuality as bad, immoral, unacceptable to acceptable. And that's why the article said that this topic of the acceptability of homosexuality, this shows and it's deemed as the greatest shift in public opinion in modern history of a social issue. Take all of the social issues in America. This topic by itself, it shows us the greatest shift in public opinion. Such a remarkable shift that just in 30 years, 50% changed their mind. 50% of the population, they changed from seeing something immoral to moral. Usually it takes much more time. It'll take many generations until something bad, something evil becomes evil. It'll take 100 years, 150 years. But just within 30 years, you have how many people from the population? 50%. They change their minds. Do you see this gradual change? How we're changing the definition of morality and what's acceptable and what's not? And like I mentioned, all of this highlights once again that the West is advancing in everything except morality. The West is in a moral decline because every year it's getting worse and worse. What will happen in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years? We will be surprised. Now we'll say, no way, it'll never happen. In the same way, if you lived in the 80s, you would tell yourself, no way a day will come in America that same-gender relationships will be okay. They'll get their rights. You would have said, no way, this is disgusting. This is unnatural. Now, there are certain disgusting things, for example, incest, that we say will never happen. Wait 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And tomorrow I'll speak more about this. And do you know what the problem with all this is? What makes the matters worse is we cannot even address the immorality of all this. We cannot even object to it. You have to stay quiet. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, let's say you see a woman walking on the street half naked, and you go and you want to tell her, excuse me, ma'am, what you're doing is immoral. Please cover up. This is aib. This is shameful. Don't wear such clothes. If you tell her if you give her such a suggestion or such words, she'll be completely confused, surprised. What are you talking about? What's so aib about? What am I doing wrong? She won't even get what you're talking about. Do you know why? Because she has no haya. If there's no haya, she's not going to understand why she's doing a wrong action. If you have no haya, no logic will ever convince you. If I tell a Westerner dating is bad, he'll say, why? I don't get it. What's wrong with dating? If you tell them, for example, that all the other things that we spoke about, the bad aspects of the Western society, dating and drinking and the immorality, same gender relationship, this is bad. If you tell them this is bad, immoral, they won't even understand why. Because when you lose that level of haya, you don't understand why certain actions are immoral. You either have the haya or you don't. If you don't, I don't care how many lectures you give them, they won't understand it. And in fact, it's the other way around. They are surprised at the muhajjaba. What is she doing? She's crazy. In the middle, it's summer, it's 90 degrees, and she's wearing hijab. She's a crazy lady. This is the first problem, is that we're not on the same page. Her morality, their morality, and our definition of morality is completely different. Do you see? That's why you can't object. Because our understanding of sahih and batil and what's good and bad and moral and immoral is different than their understanding. And when you're not on the same page, you can't convince them. You can't object. It's like going to a person in Jahiliya telling him, why are you bearing your daughter? He's going to say, what's wrong with it? Why? What's wrong? I don't understand. How? This is a bad action. And the second problem, why we can't even object, is you'll get vilified. I dare anyone to go out somewhere in a public occasion, on TV, or in a university, or in a conference, and say that homosexuality is bad, and this is immoral, and this is unnatural. Wallahi, you'll make it on the front pages of all the newspapers and all the channels. Look at this backwards Muslim guy. He's so backwards. He's against human rights. He's against freedoms. Won't they? No one can dare. They'll fight you. They'll take you down. The entire society now sides with whom? Sides with the one that's doing immoral actions, and they will turn against the person that objects to immorality. That's why now I'm afraid to say homosexuality is bad. I'm afraid to say it because they will vilify me, and they will fight against me, and they will label you and slander you and launch a huge campaign against you. That's why you have to stay quiet. Do you see what's happening in the Western world? 50 years ago, no man would dare say that I am homosexual. Now I dare you to speak against them. They'll use everything, all their power to destroy you and shame you. You will be the one that will be shamed. You will be the one that is doing aib, that's doing something immoral, by speaking against these innocent human beings. And like I said, this is what happened in the Jahiliya. Instead of vilifying the person that's doing the evil, they vilify the person that wants to do amr bil ma'roof nahi anil munkar. And that's exactly what they did to Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Al-Hussein, he made his uprising and he declared his revolution to say no to the dhulm of Yazid, to the immorality that existed, to the evil that existed in the Muslim nation. When he was killed, people used to what? People used to vilify him. They used to say, look at Hussein. How dare he? He made disunity in the ummah. And he was a Khariji because Yazid was the Amir, he was the Khalifa, and he had no right to go against him. Subhanallah, Imam Al-Hussein, who was the victim, he turned into who? He turned into the villain. And the villain turned into the victim. Do you see how everything was upside down? This is what's happening now. Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, the grandson of Rasulullah, was vilified in that way. And like I said, history is repeating itself. Yes, Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, he received, we always mention this, he received 18,000 letters from the people of Al-Kufa, all telling him, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Hussein, come to Al-Kufa and we will fight for you, with you against Yazid. Imam Al-Hussein, he sent his cousin, Muslim bin Aqil, his cousin, as an ambassador to go and prepare everything so that once he arrives, everything's ready. All he has to do is what? He has to take these followers and fight against Yazid. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, he sent his cousin Muslim bin Aqil to Al-Kufa Muslim bin Aqil, he arrived. 18,000 people willing to fight for Imam Hussein. But unfortunately, these 18,000 were worthless. There was no loyalty. They had no faith. Ibn Ziyad began to buy them one after the other. You want to fight for Hussein? Why? Here, I'll give you 100 dinars. 100 dinars? Okay, I don't need Hussein anymore. So he would what? Buy some of them and he would scare some of them. If anyone was caught with Muslim ibn Aqil trying to support Hussein, they would be put in prison. They would be maybe tortured, even killed. So one after the other, they began to abandon Muslim ibn Aqil. He arrived 18,000. The hadith says he was praying one day, jama'ah with them. When he finished the salah, he looked back, he saw there's nobody. 18,000 went down to zero. That's how they betrayed Muslim ibn Aqil. 18,000 to zero. Muslim ibn Aqil, he left the field. He saw now he has no supporters. What am I going to do? He has no place to go in Al-Kufa. He has no business being in Kufa. The only reason why he's here is because those 18,000 invited him. They told him, come and we will prepare to fight Yazid. Where does he go now? So he starts walking in the streets of Al-Kufa. He doesn't know where to go. He's so disappointed, so disturbed. He's so upset that the whole mission is now completely destroyed. Until he reaches a house, just a random house. He sits beside that house on the porch and he's in distress. This house was the house of a woman by the name of Taw'a. Such a great woman. We don't know too much about her except this story. And because of this story that she gave shelter to Muslim ibn Aqil for one night of her life, we remember her for eternity. Just give one night for Ahlul Bayt, they will give you eternity. So he sat by the door. She came out. She says, what are you doing in front of my house? It's not safe. There's a curfew. Ibn Ziyad's searching. She doesn't know who he is. He says, I'm thirsty. She brings water to him. He takes the water. He drinks it. He's still there. She says, okay, go. Why are you still here? He tells her, إِلَىٰ أَيْنَ يَذْهَبْ مَنْ لَيْسَ لَهُ أَهْلٌ فِي هَذَا الْمِصْرِ. Where do I go? I have nowhere to go. I have no family in Al-Kufa. She tells him, who are you? He tells her, أنا Muslim ibn Aqil. I am Muslim ibn Aqil. I am the cousin and ambassador of Hussein. And he sent me to Al-Kufa to mobilize these supporters. But now the people of Al-Kufa have betrayed me and Hussein. She says, you are the ambassador of Hussein. She was a lover of Hussein. She was a lover of Ahlul Bayt. She said, I'm so sorry that I wasn't more respectful with you. Come inside my house. He goes in her house. It's his last night. She brings him food. He does not eat. He spends that night in ibadah, worship, salah, Quran. And then he sleeps. He takes a nap in the middle of the night. He sees his uncle, Amir al-Mu'mineen, or his grandfather, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yes, his uncle, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he tells him, my dear nephew, Muslim, it won't be long before you join us. We are waiting for you. He wakes up. He's frightened. He knows that it's his last night. He knows it's his last night. He finishes his ibadah. And then once he goes back to sleep, he wakes up in the morning. He sees the enemies are outside. Ibn Ziyad knows that he is in the house of Taw'a because the son of Taw'a, he was amongst the enemies. And he informed the government that Muslim ibn Aqil is in my mother's house. So they send many soldiers to capture and arrest him. Muslim ibn Aqil, he knows that this is the end. He goes out like a lion. He unleashes a sword and he begins to fight so courageously and bravely against the enemies until they overwhelm him. They arrest him. When they arrest him, Muslim ibn Aqil, he begins to cry. The enemy, Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, the leader of that cavalry, he tells him, oh Muslim, you're so afraid of being arrested, you're crying? You're such a coward, you're crying because you're arrested. Muslim ibn Aqil, he tells him, I am not crying for myself. Why are you crying? He says, I am crying for my master Hussein. Why are you crying? He says, I am crying for my master Hussein because he is on his way to Al-Kufa, but he has no supporters. They have all betrayed him. They take Muslim ibn Aqil to the palace of Ibn Ziyad. Once he enters, Ibn Ziyad tells him, say salam to me by saying, Assalamu ala al-Amir. I am your Amir. Say salam to your Amir. Muslim ibn Aqil says, my only Amir is Hussein. I have no Amir. I have no master besides Hussein. Amiri Husseinun wa ni'mal Amir. And then they bring him water. He was thirsty. He asked for some water. They brought him some water. But because he was injured in his mouth and there was blood coming out, he could not drink. So Muslim ibn Aqil did not drink. Ibn Ziyad then ordered his troops to take Muslim ibn Aqil to the roof. They took him to the roof. Before they execute him, they ask him, do you have any final wishes? He says, yes, give me just 2 minutes. Let me pray 2 rak'ahs to Allah. He prays the 2 rak'ahs, and then he turns towards the direction of Imam Hussein. He tells him, alayka minni salam ya Aba Abdullah. Farewell my master Hussein. And then he tells him, forgive me ya Aba Abdullah, I was not able to mobilize and prepare the troops for you. Forgive me that you will come to Al-Kufa and you will see that they have all betrayed you. The people of Al-Kufa, they have gathered outside the palace of Ibn Ziyad. They know that Muslim ibn Aqil has been captured, arrested. Some say he will be spared, others say he will be put in prison, others say he will be killed. All of a sudden they notice the beheaded body of Muslim ibn Aqil falls down from the roof of the palace, and then they throw the head of Muslim ibn Aqil. أين المنادي ومسلما أيوا سيدا أيوا مظلوما يا. And then they take the body of Muslim ibn Aqil, they tie it to a horse, and they begin to drag his bodies in the streets of Al-Kufa. Now Imam Hussein alayhi salam is on his way to Kufa. He hears the news. He hears the news that Muslim ibn Aqil has been killed. What does he do? The first thing that he does, the daughter of Muslim ibn Aqil, Hamida, was with him. Look at the heart, the compassionate heart of Hussein. Right away he directs his attention towards the daughter of Muslim. Now he knows she's an orphan, she has no father. He goes to her, he sits beside her, and he begins to tap her on her head as if she's an orphan, telling her that she is an orphan. He tells her, my dear daughter, he calls her daughter, my dear daughter Hamida, now my daughters are your sisters, now I am your father. She tells him, was my father Muslim killed? He tells her, yes, your father Muslim was betrayed in Al-Kufa and killed. Assalamu alayka ya mawlaya ya Aba Abdullah وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
أنا ما فتحت العين إلا والحسين أمامي ونطقت أول كلمة باسم الحسين كلامي باسم الحسين كلامي فنموت وهو معي وفي لحمي وفي أعظامي وقصدته